If you could have any flavour cake in the world, what would you choose? If you asked 100 people the same question, you'd almost certainly get a huge variety of flavours, and there would be just as many reasons why people pick the flavours they pick. I, for example, will never pick a chocolate or coffee cake unless it's white chocolate, because I'm allergic to chocolate and coffee. Apparently, it's a bean thing. Regardless of what flavour you pick, your reasons for picking it and your horror that someone else could choose a flavour that you hate, all the cakes would have 4 ingredients in common: flour, fat, eggs, and sugar. They are also all baked. Some have milk, some have flavourings, some have fruit in them. Some cakes are baked for longer than others, some have a longer shelf life than others, but they all have those 4 basic ingredients in common. We can have the conversation another day about whether or not a Jaffa cake is really a cake. Oh, people are divided on that one. So why am I talking about cakes in relation to clutter clearing? Well, when people ask me, well, why do I have my clutter challenge? What causes it? I always explain that their clutter is like a cake. Everyone has a clutter cake that is unique to them, yet they all have 4 common ingredients. It's the flavorings that you have in your cake that make your clutter cake as unique as your fingerprint. And it's why no one can or ever should make any assumptions about you, your clutter, and what's right for you. If 20 years ago I'd paid an expert to help me declutter, they may have assumed that I wanted a chocolate cake and helped me and given me advice based on that assumption. And that would have been disastrous for me. So let's take a look at the 4 common ingredients that's in everyone's clutter cake. So the first ingredient is trauma. Now, just to be clear, when I use the word trauma, I'm not suggesting we've all had a dramatic, required immediate intervention type of trauma. Most trauma actually goes undetected at the time. For example, I only became aware that I had been interfered with by a babysitter at the age of about 5 or 6 when I watched a BBC TV appeal being launched in 1986 called Childline. I watched a dramatisation that caused me to question past events, which I then kept to myself for the next 3 years. I didn't tell anyone. So a trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event, and we may not realise the impact it has on us until much later on in our lives. And what is a trauma to one person may not be a trauma to another. So judging or comparing traumas is both unhelpful and dangerous. Even if our conscious mind doesn't register the event as a trauma at the time, you can be sure that your subconscious mind has registered it and is acting accordingly. Yet unless your conscious brain tells our subconscious brain it's safe to process the trauma, our subconscious brain will forever be behaving in a constant state of fight or flight to protect us. It will do that until it gets further instructions to do otherwise. Bullying, the loss of a loved one, serious illness in the family unit, moving home, children leaving home. There are lots of different types of traumas that can occur at any time in our life. They can cause us to seek out comfort and healing by forming emotional attachments to things and feeling the need to keep and protect them, irrespective of those things' practical use. The second ingredient in your clutter cake is the need for safety and control. So the way our brain responds to a trauma, either consciously or subconsciously, has one key objective: to make us feel safe again. The trauma has made us feel out of control of our environment and our world, so naturally we want to feel safe again. For example, if we've experienced financial trauma, whether it was the result of financial instability, the end of a relationship, a recession, losing a job, whatever it may be, and we've experienced the fear of not being able to buy essentials, feed ourselves, or pay the bills, maybe even losing a home as a result, it makes sense that our response would be to not want to feel financially insecure again. Some would respond by never spending anything and saving everything. Others would respond by making sure we have a stock of essentials, buying non-essentials when they're on special offer, Some people respond by doing both and end up with a poverty mindset, believing they don't have any spare money, regardless of how much money they actually have. We may feel safe when we can simply see that we have money in the bank and an unlimited stock of essentials in our home. The third ingredient of our clutter cake is habits. So for something to become a habit, we must consciously repeat it between 66 and 254 times. The bad news is if we've experienced a trauma, either consciously or subconsciously, and especially if it was when we were young, when we had limited skills and experience to know how to deal with that trauma, we only had to respond to that trauma in a particular way between 66 and 254 times for that response to the trauma to become a habit. The really bad news is that the older we get, the closer to 254 times we have to consciously repeat something to either break or make a new habit. So, for example, my mother constantly told me from an early age that she wished that she'd never had children. She was emotionally distant. I was discouraged from expressing my feelings and dismissed if I did. I didn't know it at the time, but this caused me repeated emotional traumas. When this started, I looked for other ways to get love and affection. I turned to our pet dog. I would climb onto the kitchen counter, open the dog cupboard, and shared dog biscuits with Heidi, our golden retriever. I particularly liked the shape biscuits, the yellow ones. Heidi gave me love and affection that I craved when I gave her a treat. I built an emotional bond to her by sharing food. I didn't know at the tender age of 4 that my behavior was a response to the emotional trauma, but as a result, I developed a habit of emotional comfort eating. The fourth and final ingredient of your clutter cake is fear. A fear of change, a fear of failure, a fear of a lack of approval in the eyes of others, a fear of forgetting or being forgotten, a fear of losing that sense of safety and control, a fear of not mattering, a fear of what if. The list of possible fears is endless. Yet it's not just the fear of the unknown and unpredictable future that's a core ingredient in our clutter cake. We also have a fear of the past, a fear of acknowledging, facing, and finally processing the trauma. The one thing all the fears have in common is a fear of changing the status quo. We want to let go of the clutter, but we have a fear of the void that may be left, a fear that our lives will be empty without it. When we start our clutter clearing journey, we're finally choosing what cake we want in our future, rather than just accepting what we have. You can use a life timeline on your journey to help you see how these 4 ingredients have created your current clutter cake. Take some time to process the trauma. Decide how you want to get the safety and control that you need in your future clutter-free cake. Choose what habits you want and get the help you need to face the fear. Happiness is about a conscious choice, not an automatic response. If you're ready to find out what's in your unique clutter cake and what it's made of, and create a clutter-free cake instead, click on the link with this video to start your 7-step clutter clearing journey to your clutter-free life.